Hi, this is Zach with Worn and Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at the Victorinox Officer's Day Date watch. Victorinox is a brand that I'm sure everyone is very familiar with from their knives as well as their watches. They've been making watches since, I believe, the 90s, and they have these kind of classical military-styled designs and really nice prices that don't break the bank. This watch is a fairly new version, and it's a particularly good example of what they do and the kind of prices they achieve. Swiss-made watch, obviously, sapphire crystal, an automatic ETA 2836 movement with day date. And this watch comes in at a very modest $725. Has very nice texturing, very nice finishing, and it's just an all-around, I think, great value. So let's take a closer look. The case of the Officer's Day Date has been sized really to be very versatile. Clearly the design of it plays off of classic military designs, but I think there's also elements that are more refined to be kind of more acceptable for formal occasions, and then elements that are also quite robust, such as quite thick crown guards. The size of it is 40 millimeters in diameter, 48 millimeters lug to lug, and only about 11 millimeters thick. So it is actually a very nice kind of middle, small size sport watch, and that does help it kind of toe the line between sporty and dressier, which I think is one of the real strengths, the versatility of this watch. The design itself, has fairly classic lines. You have nice thick lugs here, and then these, like I said, these very broad crown guards that come out here. The crown itself is also fairly nicely sized. It's very large, and about 7.25 in diameter, about 4 millimeters thick. So it has a nice presence. It's easy to hand wind. It's not a screw-down crown. The case does have the watch does have a 100-meter water resistance, which is suitable for I think light splashing, things like that. I wouldn't dive too deep with this. The watch has a fairly nice kind of finishing to it, a nice mix of finishes. So the main case has satin brushing all around, and then the bezel is polished, so that little bit of contrast just adds some play and light, a little bit more of a refined look. The crown is also polished steel, once again just adding a little bit of contrast. The crown is also signed with the Victorinox shield logo. Flipping the watch over now and opening it up, 1 second. You can see it has a display case back to show the movement inside. The movement is fairly undecorated, save the Victorinox logo on the rotor. Nevertheless, though, we always like to be able to see a movement if possible. What I really like about the Victorinox Officer's Day Date dial is that it's totally monochromatic with the case as well as amongst itself, and it just uses texture and depth and applied markers to create something that is interesting to look at, legible, and just kind of unique. So it has this primary index here of large hour numerals that are applied markers, and they are in polished steel. They are quite thick, so they jump off of the dial nicely, and those contrast with the brushed steel ring beneath those. It's actually very legible during the day, and you can see if I move it around how light kind of changes on that surface. Stepping in from there, you have this cross-hatched area, and that texture is actually kind of a Victorinox signature, I believe. It's something you will see on the handles of some of their knives, and I really like what it does here because it kind of plays off of guilloche dials and kind of classical texturing, but it plays with the branding and it's unique. Within that area, then, there is also the Victorinox logo as well as a 24-hour scale. This is the one thing that kind of falls flat, it kind of misses, because there's so much texture there that honestly those numerals aren't really readable, so it's just kind of unnecessary and doesn't really have a purpose. I don't think it adds anything. Nevertheless, it's also pretty easy to ignore. It's not like offensive, it's just kind of a little bit off. Coming in from 3 here, you have this kind of arm of brushed steel, and within that you have the day date window. The date is presented in black on white, which with the steel I think works fine. Sometimes white on black or black on white rather, can be too contrasty, but I think that works with silver because it is fairly light. Lastly, on the outer ring of the dial, you have a kind of a beveled chapter ring, and on that ring you have hash marks for the individual minutes as well as loomed dots. These are 3-dimensional dots, they're not just painted on, and these are actually the only glowing element on the dial itself, apart from the hour and minute hands, which also glow. They're pretty bright, although they are small, but I really like the way they look studded around the edge here. On that actual ring then, there is also a texture of concentric circles going around, which adds yet another different texture to the dial, just emphasizing kind of the play on light and the depth you see. The hour and minute hands then, as you can see here, are kind of very simple baton shapes with lume filling. They're quite legible. And then the second hand is done in a blued steel. It's a really cool detail because it's the only little bit of color. Blued steel also can look black in some light and blue in other light, so it's just kind of a fun, dynamic piece to the watch. Lastly, just the monochromatic look of this, I think is really cool. It's something that a lot of brands, I think a lot of brands could do more with. You see this case is brushed, and you have the polished steel, then you have all this texture in here. Just gives the watch a very solid look, like it's made out of a single piece of metal. And I find that very appealing for something that's both sporty and conservative and refined. On the wrist, the Officer's Day-Date wears very, very well. It is a smaller size, but I think it has some nice proportions to give it, enough robustness to not feel small at all. I like smaller watches, so 40 millimeters for me for kind of a sportier watch is absolutely perfect. I have a 7-inch wrist, and I think you can see here it fits very, very nicely. The look of it is just, I really, really like the look. It's conservative. It's perhaps lacking in anything that's like super exciting, but it's very wearable, and it's the kind of watch you can just pick up, put on any day of the week, and it just makes sense because it's very just middle of the road but handsome and just well done. I really, really like watches with texture, and this watch is all about texture, so it's a very cool look, and I think it really does ride that boundary between sporty and dress. So it's kind of that kind of gentleman sport watch category, if you will, which I think is kind of ideal. The watch comes on a 20 millimeter leather strap. I believe there's also a bracelet option, but this version is a 20 millimeter fitted leather strap, so it fits into the lugs perfectly here and actually is rigid there, which makes it really kind of hug your wrist. It's a very streamlined design strap. As you can see, there's no stitching on it, and it has black on the top and black on the edge as well. And it comes fitted with a deployment clasp, which is a nice touch. I think a lot of people really like these. They make it very easy once the watch is sized just to kind of snap it on like a bracelet, which I feel like this kind of strap really is good for. It's just very, pick it up and go. Overall I think that this look is really great. Obviously, the lack of color in the dial itself makes it very versatile, so you could easily put a brown leather strap on here, more rugged vintage style strap, or what we'll show you next, which is a NATO strap. Just quickly going to show it to you on a kind of a khaki colored NATO. The kind of underlying field military design of the watch is really emphasized by the military styling of a NATO strap. I also think the little bit of nylon texture works really nice with the steel case. The brown color kind of brings out certain kind of lighter elements, and it's just overall a very, very nice look, and just something you can switch up. Just a great second option from the already very nice leather strap that it comes with. Wrapping up the Victorinox Officer's Day-Date, I think it's a very, very successful kind of sporty, refined, gentleman sport watch. A watch that you can wear outside, you can wear it in an active environment, or you could totally wear this to the office. It's a very versatile design because it's actually a very conservative design. I'd say if there is something that's perhaps a drawback about that, is that it's not overwhelmingly, there's nothing that has a ton of personality about it, but it is very just satisfying and successful at what it is. And for a $725, it's just a very well-made, well-executed watch. It's a very decent value for a Swiss-made watch with sapphire crystals, an ETA movement from a very good brand. So, that just all comes together for a really nice watch that you will enjoy. And I think, having worn it now for a little while, when you put it on, you really just kind of forget it's there in a good way. It's just a watch that kind of very easily integrates into your life. It's very easy to tell the time with. It looks good with what you're wearing, period. For a solid watch, what else do you really need? So please read the full review on Worn and Wound. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, and Twitter. Thank you.